Hey everybody, Showdown here with another first edition video. It's set release Saturday video time. Today's actually Friday, but today is the release date of the new expansion Showdown for Lights. It's a brand new set of 35 cards, and then of course a companion, a supplemental, so that a person is able to then play one of the pre-constructed decks. This is a set that's the purpose of which is to have simplified gameplay with balanced, straightforward decks for newer players, beginning players. It's a way to have two decks that are ready and compatible to play against each other. So if you want to teach somebody how to play the game, these decks are simple, they're straightforward, and yet they actually do contain a lot of the elements of constructed decks that make constructed decks good. You've got continuing mission, Q's tents, alternate universe doorways, showing the use of downloading personnel, and the Squire's rules as a way to teach a new player how to just not worry about dilemmas quite yet, and then eventually you would then be able to take the Squire's rules out, maybe put something else in, and then be able to go from there with teaching a new player how to then form dilemma combos and stuff. Bottom line is that looking these two decks over, they both do look very well designed as a starter. Definitely a vast improvement over your typical starter deck for teaching a new player. So I do commend the design team for putting this together. It looks like they've definitely achieved their goal of putting out a set and a companion supplemental set for the purpose of which is to try to teach new players how to play the game, bring old players back into the game and catch them up on a lot of the new stuff. So my hat's off to them. But of course the reason why you're watching this video is that you want to hear my thoughts on all the new cards. You can go to the Trek CC website and you can go to the set list and you can look at the set list yourself. And we're going to go through this card by card or section by section and talk about it. And then at the end I'll give a top 5. And after I give a top 5, we'll deep dive into one thing in particular. So let's start off by looking at the dilemmas. There are 3 dilemmas in this new set. One of these was spoiled on Kaiser's website. One of them was spoiled, I believe, on Facebook. But we'll talk about each of them. The first is Close That Door. To get past required science and stellar cartography. Can be nullified by discarding a doorway from hand. I'm not going to belabor this one too much. That it requires stellar cartography might make it a little more difficult. Science is never going to be difficult for an opponent, and if you're playing against an opponent that has Q's tents or doorway-based draw mechanisms, it's going to be super easy to just nullify this dilemma. However, the nullification would happen after any reveal triggers go off. The fact that this requires science means it will proc with Space Lab Regular 1. So this is a good dilemma that you can play with Space Lab Regular 1 to get a guaranteed stop regardless of the nullification. And the fact that it requires stellar cartography is definitely opening up for another skill drain possibility or skill drain strategy. That skill drain strategy, you would have this dilemma, you would have the next dilemma, which is Dark Matter Pockets, which requires cartography in space. And then there's a couple others in the game that require that, and you'd be able to use a battle bridge and some damage dilemmas that you could use. I believe it's full phaser spread, kills science or stellar cartography, so that's a route that you can go possibly. And so yeah, there's a new avenue that's being opened up here for not a new avenue, but just a new skill drain possibility that's being opened up with these first two dilemmas. The second dilemma, dark matter pockets, you can download gaps in normal space adjacent to there. Gaps in normal space just basically adds a force span location adjacent to it. This is going to be, out of these three, the dilemma that I think is going to see actual constructed deck, serious tournament play, just because the download of gaps in normal space, if you do it right, you could get an opponent to face this at their next to their outpost, or maybe like 2 missions away from their outpost, and all of a sudden their outpost is now out of reach, for them being able to just fly back to their outpost, switch ships, and fly back to their mission. Or if you get it right between them, then they can only fly home and they can't fly back. So this dilemma here, Dark Matter Pockets, is definitely going to see constructed deck play. It also has a science requirement. Even if it's not at planet, 2 science is printed on the card, and so therefore it would also proc Regula 1. And if it was faced, and if it's faced at planet, it requires 2 science. If it's faced in space, it's nav and stellar cartography. So this is a dual use dilemma. You can choose to seed it at planet missions if you're trying to drain science. You can seed it in space if you're trying to drain navigation or stellar cartography. Navigation drain is also out there as well as a possible avenue. It's definitely harder, and navigation is a lot more ubiquitous than stellar cartography is, but you can definitely do either or. The third dilemma is stratagem. Unless career away team has all printed skills on an opponent's captive, opponent's choice, nullified if none, opponent may peek at 1 card, discard dilemma. I posted in response to this being spoiled elsewhere that I'm basically just putting it on par with Chula, the game, where your hope is to basically just get 1 hard stop of an opponent, and then that's it. Of course, this requires that you get a captive, and that's obviously going to be harder. You can use capture dilemmas to set this up so that you are guaranteed to get one, or you can run a capture strategy. But this dilemma here, I think, as far as constructed play, it'll be an option for capture decks if they want to use it. It would basically just kind of replace a Chula the game, I think, for the most part. The power of peeking at any 1 card is obviously most powerful if you peek at a dilemma under your mission. So there is that. This would be a way for a capture deck to try to get some free looks at some dilemmas, so that when they switch from their capture scheme to their mission solving scheme, that they'll be a little bit more efficient in that regard. So I'm going to close that door. Again, we're going to use my 5-star scale, with a 5-star being an amazing card that you should be using a lot, and a 1-star card being something that's extremely niche. Close that door is going to get a 2. Dark Matter Pockets is going to get a 4. Stratagem is going to get a 2, 2.5, I think. So, moving on. We have an equipment. We have the only event in the set. We have the only facility in the set. The first is Taspar Egg. Well, you have a captive. Your Cardassian personal present are either Integrity +2 or Integrity -2. You may change this at any time, even when facing a dilemma. Now, this is good because there are lots of dilemmas that need you to have either a lot more integrity, or you can use this to kind of manipulate who maybe has the lowest integrity, because if you have a mixed Cardassian Dominion or mixed Cardassian non-aligned group, you'd be able to then maybe have your Cardassian personnel be the lowest integrity for something, or not be the highest integrity while facing something like Rules of Obedience. So this will definitely be a card that a Cardassian player will definitely want to think about using. I think this might see play in a Cardassian Dominion Alliance deck, to kind of, as a way to like boost your chances of being able to beat a god in particular. But I'm not quite sure beyond that just how useful it's going to be. We're going to give this a 4. I think that it's going to be good in the decks that want to use it, and it will just be meaningless to everybody else. And I can't give a 5-star to a card that's only usable by like one affiliation. I think a 4 is its ceiling, and that's not a bad thing. I think that a 4 for a equipment card is pretty darn good. So then we move on to the event, Extracted Confessions. It's a hidden agenda punishment card. Seeds on table or plays on table. Each time you score points from interrogation, score an additional point. This is cumulative, so you can seed like 4 of these if you really wanted to. And then when you would capture an opponent's personnel and then you would slap an interrogation onto one of them, your opponent is going to either give you 5 points at a time, or they're going to give you like 14 points if they just want their personnel back. I don't know how good that is. I mean, this first half of the card is interesting for sure. It's probably going to be the second half of the card that is the reason why this card gets used, and that is that your TNG goals gain each different regular skill on your captives affected by your copies of torture at their highest levels. So of course you would capture an opponent's 4, 5, or 6 skilled personnel, and then you would then get them back to a brig, and then you would torture them, and then your TNG goals will get a whole bunch of additional skills for trying to beat dilemmas with. Of course, keep in mind this is regular skills, so if a personnel has a skill dot that says, oh, if a thing gain a thing, that's not a regular skill. They don't gain that. You don't get to get the bonus like multiple skill gain, or the dig deep. You don't get the dig deep ability of a skill. You only get regular skills. So, but that's not a bad thing. Like, say you capture a 7 of 9, or some other 6 skilled hoss like non-aligned Jonathan Archer, or a 7 skilled super boss like the TOS James T. Kirk. Very, very good. But of course you've got to capture them, and capture comes with a lot of hoops that you have to jump through. So moving on, well, first off, Extracted Confessions, we're going to give this a 3.5. And I think the half is being generous, because a bunch of skill gain like this is nothing to sneeze at. It's just you got to jump through the hoops. But if you're jumping through the hoops, you're jumping through the hoops anyway. So I think that's probably going to be pretty good. So we'll give it a 3.5. Moving on to Secret Prison. This is a Cardassian outpost, so it will seed at only Celtris 3 due to its own restriction text. So that overrides the normal outpost seeding rules. So this can only seed at Celtris 3, but, I don't know if you're going to be thoroughly interested in running a Secret Prison in a constructed deck when you could run pretty much any Cardassian outpost. And of course there's the reality that if you really want a brig, you would seed a Nor and then seed the holding cell site. And that would be a much more efficient thing to do, especially since the holding cell downloads specific cards. It downloads the interrogation, downloads the torture for you. So this Secret Prison is clearly just in this set for flavor and gameplay thematics, and to make it make the Showdown decks, make them work a little bit more efficiently. So I think this is a good thing, because then by doing this, then you don't have to introduce like the Nor mechanics and stuff into it. So I think this is a good card. We're just going to give it a 3. We're going to move on. It's not good. It's not bad. It's doing what it's supposed to do for the set. And nothing more, nothing less. So moving on. We have our 2 incidents in the set. We have Know Your Enemy and Latest Provocation. Each of these is essentially the additional draw mechanism for these decks. Again, These are meant to be played against each other, so of course they had to include some kind of draw mechanism. I do applaud them for trying to come up with new draw mechanisms that are good but not broke, because they're just single seeds, and single seed draw engines historically are really, really good in constructed play because they're extremely efficient. And we'll get back to that here. We'll come back to that thought later in the video. But know your enemy is seed on table if all your missions are different and they show less than 35 points. And at the end of each turn, you'll get that draw if all your missions share an affiliation icon and you are not playing that affiliation, nor Borg. So Borg can't use this. That's fine. I think that's probably a good restriction on this card. Even as a Borg player myself, it would have been cool to have another thing, but since the restriction is different and showing less than 35 points, Borg don't want to be playing with less than 35 point planets anyway, so it wouldn't have really jibed well anyway, but the designers went ahead and just closed the door on that. Haha, closed the door on that. Which is fine, so that just kind of makes it easy for people to realize when they're building a deck, but you do get an additional card draw if you meet the conditions. And we're going to come back to that thought at the end of the video, because Know Your Enemy is a 5-star card. I'm saying it right now, Know Your Enemy is a 5-star card. You're going to want to be thinking about this card when you're designing a deck. Granted, you have to meet the restriction on it, but I'm going to show you at the end of the video that there are lots of decks that, if you want to build them in a different way than the way they are typically built, then this card is going to be for you, and that there are actually a few decks for which this card is an auto include now. So we'll come back to that later in the video. Know Your Enemy, 5-star card. Latest provocation, seeds on table at the end of each of your turns. If you are playing only Cardassian, you may draw one additional card. You must discard this if you voluntarily initiate battle, attempt a mission, or play a punishment card. So this one is a lot less good. This is only usable by Cardassians and in a constructed deck format. If you want to be capturing people, you got to do that early. So if you want to capture people on like turn 2 or turn 3, which is when you need to be doing it, if you're going to do it at all, I think, then you kind of by definition want to be getting a punishment card onto that opponent. Onto that opponent's personal, onto that captive fairly quickly. And so I think realistically in a constructed deck kind of format, you would probably be discarding this card at turn 3, especially with the game kind of currently being a 5-turn meta right now with the high, for serious competitive play. I think that this card, it'll be nice to have an additional card draw end of turn for the investment of 1 seed card for the first couple of turns. So I'm not saying this is a bad card, but only Cardassians can use it, and as a Cardassian player you have to kind of hold off on it. And I don't necessarily know that that's a good thing. I mean, you can't even play this if you're playing like Cardassian Dominion Alliance, because you have to only be playing Cardassian. So we're going to just give this card, we'll give it a 3. It's doing what it needs to do for the starter, for these pre-con decks, and it might be something a Cardassian player wants to look at. If they look at it and they like it and they want to do it, it will be good because it will be a single seed card draw engine. So I'm not going to take it below a 3, so for that reason. So all right, moving on. We've got some missions to look at here. I think the missions are in a lot of ways the highlight of this set for multiple different reasons. The first one's Covert Incursion. It's a nebula in the McAllister region, which is a new region in the game. It is attemptable by Romulans, Cardassians, Dominion, or Hirogen. Leadership, Nav, Science, Cunning greater than 30. I'm a little disappointed that this doesn't have Kazon on it. I'm a little disappointed that it doesn't have Vidian on it. As we'll talk about later, there's a lot of these kind of incursion or coming into the Alpha Quadrant thematic missions um, that have those affiliation icons on them. So I'm a little disappointed not to see them on this mission, but you know, it is what it is. So the skill's very easy, cunning's very easy. You basically solve this with like 5 people, and these skills are extremely common. So this is a good mission. This is a good mission, and it's a nebula. So decks that care about nebulas, like Borg decks and so forth, are definitely going to want to use this card. It definitely opens up Borg decks to be moving into using Tomalak of Borg more, or using Dukat of Borg more, or Wayun of Borg a lot more. So yeah, this will be a good mission. I think that it's going to definitely see some play. We're going to give this a 4.5. Oh, and the picture. The picture's awesome. Gotta love the picture. Mine Enemy Fleet is also in the McAllister region nebula. This is kind of the flip side of it thematically. You mine your enemy fleet with 2 navigation and either stellar cartography or any shuttlecraft. When solved, you may damage opponents' ships in the region. It is only 30 points, but it does have Feds, Cardassians, and Ferengi on it. Oddly enough, I think that the Ferengi icon on this mission is actually pretty relevant. There is a Ferengi navigation mission specialist, and so they would even be able to do that. And there's also the non-aligned mission specialist in the of the Delta Quadrant, like non-aligned Fed people. I think it's Angelo Tassoni. So I think a Ferengi deck would even be able to solve this one for 40 points. I don't remember if they have a stellar cartography one or not. And then of course a shuttlecraft, super easy for Ferengi to come up with. You have Brunt shuttle, Quark shuttle, etc., etc. So this actually might be a good mission for Ferengi too. So we're gonna give this one a 4. Yeah, it's in conjunction with the Covert Incursion. Like Fed and Cardassian decks will like these together. Of course, the Fed icon's on one but not the other. Clearly this is meant for Cardassian deck. I mean, this is really meant for Cardassian decks. But still, I think it's a good mission. I like the photo. I like the image on this one as well. And that's kind of a common theme in this set here, is how much I really like these images. So we're going to give this one a 3.5. Prevent Military Escalation 2. It's the Mission 2 for Cardassians. Finally, they get their built-in outpost. It is the Sector 21505, Benjamin Maxwell chasing down and destroying Cardassians because he's angry mission. There's not much to say on this one. It's a built-in mission outpost. So it will find use somewhere for an opponent, for a player that wants to build a deck and have a built-in outpost that they could put like somewhere else on the space line, like away from their other facilities, so that they can pivot and stuff like that. So this is just a solid 3. The mission 2s have shown that they are good enough to show up in some good constructed decks, but they're not ubiquitous. So solid 3. Moving on to Repair Sabotage. It's another nebula, which is again super awesome. This image is, oh yeah, this is it right here. I love Deep Space Nine. I love the Defiant, and to see it on this mission, I didn't know how much I really felt like this mission in the show was lacking until here it is. Like, I feel like a hole that I didn't even know was there has now been filled with this with this mission. It requires engineer nav and then either security or Maquis personnel. Fed, Cardassian, Bajoran. So yeah, it's only 30 points, but engineer navigation are easy to come up with for mission specialists, for Feds in particular. And so this is going to be another like nebula mission that is going to be usable by a lot of different Fed decks. Yeah. So we'll give this one a 4. Secure covert transportation. nav, security, computer skill, and then +5 of smuggling is in the away team. So computer skill and navigation are both ubiquitous mission specialist skills, and so to be able to turn this mission into 40 points, and then if you bring smuggling along, even if it's not on a mission specialist, you can turn this into a 45-point mission. So of course that is meant to pair super well with Know Your Enemy, and you're going to see that with these 5 different mission affiliation icons on it, that this is going to be a mission that if a person wants to build around Know Your Enemy, this mission is going to be a top target in a lot of ways. And the Cardassian icon, the Fed icon, you know, all of these icons, we'll talk about it here, like I said, later. But there's a lot of maneuverability with these 5 icons on this mission. So, okay, let's move on to the 2 objectives. Oh, this is a 4-star mission as well. Moving on to the objectives, we have the Dispatch Magic Experts and its companion, get him cleaned up. This is a way to just thematically score some bonus points and then draw some cards and make your Cardassian missions showing 30 points or less worth +5 points. They're definitely good for these pre-con decks as a sort of thematic add to them, to make these pre-con decks interesting, give them something to do, some bonus card draws, some bonus points, so you can just still solve 3 missions for the win. And it is usable by, you know, both a Cardassian player and a non-Cardassian player. Basically, you just need to have an Alpha Quadrant Cardassian planet mission, and then you just need to have a Cardassian Nebula mission. So like a Fed player would do that and solve either the repair sabotage or the mine enemy fleet. So of course these are just making these missions even more better. And then of course you've got the extremely popular Nebula mission with a Cardassian icon. I don't know why I'm blanking on it right now. Why am I blanking on it right now? My goodness, I love that mission. I love that mission so much. Yes, evade port vessel, of course. Yeah. Of course, if you did that, you would not be using Know Your Enemy and stuff like that, but, I mean, it doesn't really matter. But yeah. So, I am not as down on these 2 as maybe some other people are. I do actually see some potential thematic use for them in constructed play. You don't also have to do these like immediately. You don't have to like, you know, try to complete the Dispatch Metagenetic Experts like immediately and like lose a personnel immediately. You can like wait. You know, like you can do other stuff, like mess with your opponent and stuff. This is only 1 seed card, because you're not seeding both of them. You're just seeding the Dispatch Metagenetic Experts. So you can kind of wait until you figure out who your good people are, your bad people are, you know, like your expendable people. You can beam them down as long as they've got the requirements. Lose one of them, and then immediately go solve your repair sabotage or whatever, and immediately get them back. So you would be scoring 5 points and then solving your mission and then drawing 3 cards, and this one even says even those already solved, and so you'd be able to, you know, in one fell swoop you're gonna say solve your repair sabotage here. You'd be able to just be at secure covert transportation, score 5 points, beam up, walk over to repair sabotage, solve it for 30. Maybe you hopefully have like an engineer or navigation mission specialist. So you would score 30, you score 5, then you score 30 for 35, then you'd score another 5 to get to 40 or even 45, and then you would immediately get him cleaned up, and then you would score another 5, and you could be at 50 points just from this nice little combo right here. You're like, okay, 30 here plus 10 for mission specialist and engineer navigation. Again, super easy to come by. You've always got Leia Brahms and you've always got Angelo Tassoni. And then you'd be able to then just do this, and then you do this, and look at that. You've scored 50 points, and you've drawn 3 cards, and you lost and were immediately then rescued your person. Yeah, and then made your other Cardassian icon missions more valuable. So a lot of incentive here to play just like Cardassian missions. And again, this is not limited to Feds, even though it's in this Fed pre-con deck. It's not limited to Feds. I can do this as like a Dominion player. If I want to play Dominion Cardassian Alliance, all I gotta do is just not beam down any of my Cardassians as part of it, as long as I got biophysics and 2 security. Oh, that's super hard for Jem Hadar to come up with, I say sarcastically. I just send down my Jem Hadar that have this. I lose one of them. I score 5 points. I download this. I then solve my Cardassian Dominion Nebula mission or whatever. Cardassian Dominion Nebula. Cardassian or, Cardassian Dominion Nebula mission, and then I get 3 card draws, and it's worth more points and all sorts of stuff. So I think that this is actually probably pretty decent. I'm giving this a higher grade than I thought that I would, but I'm going to give this a 3.5. I feel like there is usability here, even in a constructed format. So, all right. So let's move on to the people. We're going to go through this very fast because they're just personnel, and we're not going to really debate the skills too much, but there's a few highlights I want to point out. Admiral Kennelly, very good design for the set, that he can be put in the Fed or the Cardassian pre-con deck, and that he's usable in different ways at both, and in a constructed fashion. He's an admiral, so he plays for free, and he activates taking charge and junk like that. So, pretty good. Andro is the one that I want to highlight, though. The fact that he's another TNG AU icon, so therefore he becomes another... he opens another new pathway with Temporal Benefactor, specifically Worf, and then specifically the movie Nemesis icon logo Worf that has anthropology and 4 other skills, which then would turn your Andro into a double anthro personnel with 7 skills. You'd be essentially a functionally 7 skilled dude with double anthro, so you can use his double anthro then to unlock a duck blind. So, and then a Cardassian TNG deck, that's amazing. So with the new beaming rules and stuff like that regarding Nors, you can siege your Nor at a planet mission. You can go first turn download Andro with ops, and you also have seeded We Need You here onto the commander's office, so you don't even lose your card draws. So you just download Andro, you beam him down to the planet that has a duck blind on it, and there you go. Bob's your uncle. You've got a one card draw engine up and running. So Andro, I think, is really good here. I'm going to point him out specifically as a 4 to 4.5. And of course it opens up. He opens up other weird avenues as well, then he becomes a temporal agent, and if you have time locations, you can use Temporal Benefactor as well. If you want to, instead of using him for the double anthro, you use him and you bring him to the past for some odd reason. Specifically, and this is specifically, you could have him, and this is again really weird. You could have him. You could see Terok Nor. You see Terok Nor at the mouth of the wormhole. You have him relocate to the Celestial Temple. You hit him with a orb icon with orb experience, and now he can draw you a card there as well. So you don't even have to do the Temporal Benefactor stuff. You don't have to use the temporal. You don't have to use Temporal Benefactor. You can just do it that way instead, where you're not seeding Temporal Benefactor, you're just seeding the Celestial Temple instead and playing with orb experiences. So Andro, really good, 4.5. Bunch of random TNG Cardassians to flush them out so you can actually play a TNG Cardassian deck. Glenn Telak here is pretty good, that he can twice per game down the holding cell door. So then he, with the use of that, he is your guy that downloads you your punishment cards with the holding cell door. And somehow gets you a Cardassian pad, which is good. If you have a captive, he becomes a 4-skilled person, which is pretty good. TNG Cardassian with honor over here makes him pretty good. Gully Vec, while he is at a Federation mission, he becomes a 6-skilled boss, and he is a Gull. So again, he does taking charge, and he has good stats. And there's good stats here. Human prisoner Picard. He just can't battle feds, but he's opens up a 2 honor and a non-officer archaeology here, so that's decent. Jill Ora, universal female, because TNG Cardassians are going to struggle with matriarchal stuff and gender-related stuff if they didn't have her. So as much as it will pain you to put this little girl in your deck, you will need to put her in your TNG Cardassian deck. And then, of course, just flushing out security, medical science, just fleshing out the classifications here. Mikar downloads Taskbar Egg, and as we said before, that's a good card. So he'll be able to facilitate that use. Lapel is a universal force skill if you've got a captive. Vengar, as just a science personnel, he's got greed, which might be helpful. So yeah, just all pretty usable. They're all just going to get, Gullah Vec will give him a 3.5 for being a 6-skilled boss. We'll give Glenn Telak a 3.5 for his ability to download holding cell doors and stuff. But other than that, rating the personnel is usually just 3s unless they stand out somehow. Moving on to the feds, we get to see our main cast in a new way, specifically like red uniform Data and good uniform Deanna Troi and naughty Beverly Crusher, upset and pensive William T. Riker, and oh my gosh, I wanted to make the Stargate reference here, but for whatever reason I'm just blanking. Senator something or other, forget. Oh, I forget what his character is in Stargate now. I'm just blanking on it, but yeah. Key special downloads get it done, so he's got a built-in card draw engine on him for one-time use, and he's a 5-skilled boss when he's at a Cardassian mission, and Gates has got 4 good skills when she's at a Cardassian mission. I don't know how usable William T. Riker's ability here is, or his skill of making shuttlecraft better, and the fact that he only has like 3 skills. I don't know. It really pains me that like a lot of the William T. Rikers in the game are just not all that great, and that like probably the best one is the one where it's him, it's Mr. and Mrs. Troi. It's probably the best William T. Riker in the game, and that's actually rather upsetting to me. That they haven't been able to come up with a William T. Riker that's actually like really good, I am told stories that even like the original William T. Riker, when the game came out in 93, 94, that it was like, why play with William T. Riker when you just want to play with 6-skilled Picard? They got the same things, but Picard's still better. So, I don't know. It just pains me. I think it's becoming a joke at this point that they make their William T. Rikers like milk toast. We got Mr. Agent Worf here, so to speak. When he is at a Cardassian mission, he goes to 4 skills and gives other personal presence strength +2. He's a standard Worf 7/6/10, so he's fine. He's only got a staff star, so I don't know. I'm not really in love with any of these. Data, Troy's obviously good. She can unstop her ship. Obviously unstopping is always really good. You still have to like get stopped by the dilemma, as opposed to cheating your way out. So you guys still got to face it and get stopped by it. But being able to unstop it's really good. So Deanna Troy's, I think, the best of this group. She's going to get a 4. Data, having 6 skills when he's at a Cardassian mission is also really good, so he gets a 4. So we get a Soon type android with 6 skills, and science in particular is pretty good, so it's nice to see. Beverly with her security and getting a type 2 phaser if she's at a Cardassian mission is not bad. She's also got this kind of odd medical biosecurity anthropology skill matrix, so that might be useful. Of course, Deanna Troy will be usable with if you see it in intuition. So, just another little bonus with her. But yeah, 3s across the board, other than the fact that I'll give Data 4 and Deanna Troy 4. The ships are pretty much what you'd expect. Bonus, you get a captive on the Vitar, commanded by Golovec. The Cairo, commanded by Edward Jellicoe. And gets boosted when it's at a Cardassian mission. It has a natural 8 range. It only requires 2 staffing icons. That makes it very staffable, which that alone will make it good with its 8 range. And has a matching commander. And then we just have the alternate border versions of these. So the ships, I'm just giving them 3s because they're nothing special, but they're not bad. So that's the set. We kind of give it a top to bottom run. If you agree or disagree, feel free to note that in the comments. Please like and subscribe. And now we're going to move on to our discussion that we promised about Know Your Enemy. So I went through the database, and there are a lot of missions that qualify. Obviously, all you need is for the mission to be showing less than 35 points. I've pulled out what I think are pretty much like the best ones, right? So they're ones that have mission or affiliation icons on them, and they are not like terrible. Like there's ones that are like, here's one that's worth 15 points, one that's worth 20 points. Those are not really going to be like functionally useful. So these are all the ones that I think are functionally useful in such a deck, where you're like, I want to build a deck. I don't really care about having big point missions. Maybe I'm trying to play an aggressive deck, or I'm trying to play, you're playing get captives, or you're playing it like a Dominion Slaughter deck, or you're playing a Hirogen Slaughter deck, or something like that. And you want a single seed card draw engine so that it opens up your other seed slots for more of the whacking your opponent stuff. So, what I will say is the very first thing that came to mind for me is that Homestead decks are absolutely going to use Know Your Enemy. They are already restricted to the need to have less than 35 points showing, and they're already pre-built to get themselves to 40 points off 3 missions. So obviously Know Your Enemy is immediately in a Homestead deck. Just, it's there already. You just got to figure out what missions it's going to be. And so for the Mirror Quadrant, it's ridiculously good. They have all of these good missions right here. All of them down in this line right here are all very usable, already used missions. Sure, they don't get to use Test Warship to try to get themselves up to the 100 points easier, but Mirror Quadrant decks are already like scoring 5 bonus points here and 5 bonus points there from their objective and their downloaded objectives and stuff like that. So them getting the 40 points, they don't even need the mission. They don't even need the mission to help. And so, gosh, Know Your Enemy, wow. There's a whole new class, there's a whole new type of Mirror Quadrant Homestead deck that just got opened up. And we'll just look at these. If you want to play Terrans, you've got Observe Alliance Operations, and you can go, you've got the ability to do like this Bajoran mission, and this Bajoran mission, and this Bajoran mission, and this Bajoran mission, as a way that you're playing like not Bajorans, but yet you have enough. And again, you don't have to have 6 in the Mirror Quadrant. you can just do like 4 or 5 in the Mirror Quadrant and then stick an Alpha Quadrant mission that qualifies, like say analyze rapid terraforming and play with Regula 1 for, dilemma boosting and so forth. You've got study planetary devastation. Well, that wouldn't be Bajoran, but and you wouldn't have Bajoran here with rapid terraforming. But you get what I'm saying. That there's a lot of options out here. You can play with you can just play with a treat plague ship for no reason. You can play with break prisoner. You can play with investigate Maquis activity instead. If you want to be like, I'm playing Terran Feds in the Mirror Quadrant, and I just need a 5th mission, 6th mission, to go with the 4 other 5 that I have here to qualify, and boom, Bob's your uncle homestead deck. There you go. You don't even, because again, with homestead, you don't have to all be in one quadrant. There's nothing that says that you don't. You just need to have not seeded missions showing more than 30 points. So easy peasy, Bob's your uncle. None of these missions show more than that. Now, if you're playing like the other way you could do it, oddly enough, and this is a recurring theme for all of the options that I know and that I noticed pretty quickly, is that the Klingon icon shows up all over the place on missions that are less than 30 points. I mean, in the Mirror Quadrant, you can do Seek Knowledge Cake, you can do Observe Spatial Coordinates, you can then have your Alpha Quadrant mission be the Alpha side, so you can play with the Vintac Dry Dock, and you can go after the Starship Defiant and all that noise, while also still having Enlistment Drive and Mind Dilithium is the way you start with if you want to be with the the TOS era Terran Feds, or if you want to have Seek Knowledge Cake or the Terran Hideout mission. Even you got Klingon here, and this is your homeworld. I mean, it's the Mirror Quadrant with Homestead and Know Your Enemy. It's perfectly set up. It's a match made in heaven. It's absolutely going to be a deck that someone needs to just put the work into building. I mean, I might do it myself, because again, Mirror Quadrant right now is already pretty much set up for it. Wants it's. I mean, right now it's abusing Obsession to try to do a 2-mission win, but the Obsession scoring a ton of bonus points. I don't see that. I don't see that lasting much longer. I'm pretty sure that Balance team is gonna try to nerf that down a bit. So I think that we can assume that Mirror Quadrant decks are gonna have to go back to solving 3 missions to win. And there you go, Homestead with Know Your Enemy, match made in heaven. So that's kind of how good it looks for the Mirror Quadrant. And we'll keep Examine Disappearing Site over here, because it has 4 different icons on it, and Stellar Cartography, Science, Treachery, Honor. It's super easy to solve. It's got Stellar Cartography, Science. All of the skills that are on it are open for mission specialists to boost it. And so it's like a Klingon mission, and then you could do like Analyze Rapid Terraforming, so you can get Regula 1 into it. And if you're, this we'll say a Fed deck, just a Fed deck. And then we could do Tactical Observation, and we could see the Valiant as another reporting engine. And then we could put in a Plague Planet. If we want to like automatically overcome plague ships here for whatever reason. And then, hey, let's also do Investigate Maquis activities. So we basically like do this for 35 points. With possible mission specialists, and then we do like say a Plague Planet, so that if we somehow face a plague ship, we just automatically overcome it. Or we could just do this, where we just go, okay, Investigate Maquis activity, and so Examine Disappearing Site, and then do whatever other mission. I mean, it's just ridiculous, the kind of options you have if you want to play an Alpha Quadrant deck doing this, and you want to play Feds. I mean, that's Feds. Romulans. Romulans have those two. It also has a tactical observation if it really wanted it. Romulans probably have it even better. Because look at this. Romulans can play with Examine Disappearance Site, Tactical Observation, Plague Planet, and then they can go into the neutral zone and do patrol neutral zone, investigate destruction if they really wanted to. If you're a Fed deck, you'd be able to do these three. It's insane the kind of combinations you can come up with here. I think this was one that jumped out at me right away that I thought in the back of my head when I was doing it, and that is androids. I mean, the android deck has Klingon and Romulan on both of it, and so you could run androids. You could do it in just like the non-aligned androids deck, and you still have Study Cometary Cloud coming in as non-aligned Romulan. You've got Amagos Observatory coming in as non-aligned Romulan. You have Treat Plague Ship coming in as non-aligned Romulan. And you've got Plague Planet as Romulan if you find a way to get access to it. You've got Study Cometary Cloud. Yeah, there's just so many things that you can do, where you have access to it because it has the non-aligned icon which you're playing, but then you have the Romulan icon to trigger Know Your Enemy. So you've got 5 missions right there, and then you just pull any other Romulan mission that qualifies in, if you really wanted to, and you just kind of plan on doing, you just probably plan on doing these 3 or these 3 or whatever it is. So, if you're playing Klingons, like say you're playing TNG Klingons, and you really want to do it, and you don't care about, you just need to have the Klingon icon, Fed icon. You're right back to the same thing as Romulans. You've got the ability to do tactical observation. You have the ability to do the provide purpose, because you can use the Romulan icon as well. You just don't play with androids, I guess. You still have Examine Disappearance Site. You have the Plague Planet. There's so many combinations here. You've got Destabilize Region that you can do if you're playing Klingons, but you want to have, you want access to Know Thy Enemy. Yeah, it's really good. Military Exercise is an amazing one for a TNG Klingon deck, who then uses the Romulan icon. It's really good. Very thematic. Very thematic. Deep Space Nine. You can play you play the Quad Treaty deck with Deep Space Nine, and you would just not play either the Fed side, the Romulan side, or the Klingon side, and you would use Battle of Cardassia as your okay, cool. I can do this for 50 points when okay, I've drawn over how many turns here. Now I'm okay with dropping my draw from the Know Thy Enemy, and you would actually play the remaining card that you need, the remaining ship that you need, so that you can get 50 points out of this one. And then Bajorans have it really simple because they can play with Deep Space Nine seated at the wormhole. They would then be able to do resistance, Bajoran resistance cell, have all these Cardassian Bajoran missions that qualify, Krasari Rendezvous, and resist occupying forces, and study planetary devastation. I mean, Bajoran resistance, holy cow. Anything that's Cardassian or Dominion, they would then have access to as well. So Bajoran resistance absolutely is, and Bajoran resistance decks already pretty much do 3 missions to win. I mean, they don't really have a 2-mission win option anyway. So they are definitely going to be using Know Your Enemy, which again, very thematic. And then let's talk about Dominion, because the Gamma Quadrant as well. The Gamma Quadrant as well is like super open. So if you're like seeding in the Gamma Quadrant as a Dominion player, and then you want to go to the Alpha Quadrant, your primary supply depot can seed at any mission anyway. If you want to, so you can seed at any one of these missions. But again, you've got the Cardassian icon showing up. You've got the Bajoran icon showing up a bunch. So if you really wanted to do it this way, and then you pull any of these Alpha Quadrant missions that they like to do. Military exercises is a good one. If you're going to play Dominion Capture, you do Break Prisoner, and you're running like Dominion Cardassian Alliance, or just straight Dominion. What makes like say Break Prisoner really good is that Dominion will run non-aligned personnel, so they can attempt it, but Dominion have Subjugate Planet. So in their own way, the Dominion have an amazing way of doing a 3-mission win and using Know Your Enemy, because they will seed salvage wreck ship in the Gamma Quadrant for their primary supply depot, and then they'll do Break Prisoner. They'll capture an opponent's personnel, and then this will be like their primary mission that they do. And they'll have military exercises in space, and they will have Destabilized Region in space. As like the space missions that they can do, and then they've got Find Hidden Base for an additional for another planet mission. So right there, they've got their 2 40-point planet missions ready to go, and they don't even need a Subjugate Planet. I mean, they can on Break Prisoner, but Find Hidden Base is kind of like your primary one anyway. So you got a 40-point planet there, and you have a bunch of, for the Dominion, very easy 30-point space missions, 3-mission win, bingo, bango, bongo right there. So Know Your Enemy is going to be a really good card for like a Dominion capture deck. It's kind of sad because like Covert Incursion would have been really good, but it's 35 points. So meh. But yeah, still, it's a little disappointing you can't make that work, but them's the breaks. Can't have everything. So that's like Dominion. So Dominion have an amazing option as well for what they want to do. Like I said, they've got a bunch of options here. We go back to the Deep Space Nine deck, and say like you want to run Deep Space Nine with Fed and Bajoran. You've got you can do the Klingon route. You've got Klingon mission there. You've got Klingon mission, Bajoran mission here. You've got like there's just a bunch of different ways. You got Bajoran mission, or you do like So there's just so many ways. You just got to do the research. You got to figure out how you want to do it. But there's just so many three mission win decks that you can do. But of course, Know Thy Enemy is probably one of its best uses is if you're playing like TNG Mission Specialist, because you just keep downloading Mission Specialists and you find the missions where you can score them for 40 to 45 points using the Mission Specialist, and then you just come up with 10 to 15 bonus points some other way. You do a Cytherians, a self-seeded Cytherians, you do a self-seeded Barclays, you do the objective, the metagenic objective we talked about, or there's a lot of 10 bonus point engines out there to use that you could still do TNG 2 mission win with Know Your Enemy. So Know Your Enemy, whew. And now here's the one that took a little bit of thought. It took a little bit of thought, but it just goes to show you that with just two different thoughts. These two took some additional thoughts, but it just goes to show that this card is so good with just a little bit of ingenuity. It's going to be a really good, one seed draw engine. So you've got in the Delta Quadrant, again, it's the Klingon icon that's showing up a bunch. You've got established settlements. You can do, if you want to play Voyager, You can do Established Settlement, Contact Resistance. You start with Voyager at Liberation, so you're not doing holograms, you're doing standard Voyager with Liberation. And you've got Aftermath. Aftermath 2, which is... No, that one doesn't work. But with the Klingon icon, it's those three. And then you'd be able to... you would be able to then just put, 3 Klingon Federation missions in the Alpha Quadrant, and you can just try to maybe you would just do Homestead this way. Yeah, so, if you wanted to play, like, say, Kazon, you'd be able to do Kazon with Hunt Alien and Bypass Warzone, and then each of these Klingon missions in different ways, because this is a non-aligned icon, or this has got a non-aligned icon, and you start your Kazon outpost here. You've got a non-aligned icon here with Contact Resistance to gain access. The Established Settlement is just kind of a throwaway, but your opponent doesn't know that at the time. Then you've got these two. And if you're say you're running Kazon, you've got non-aligned icon here. You've got Dominion icon here. You have the Dominion icons that were on those other missions. If you can just gain access to them in some way, you've got those. Yeah. Kind of rambling a little bit here, but one thought that I had was that the Delta Quadrant Klingons might be able to use this really well. That they can start in the Delta Quadrant at Liberation, and then use Aftermath 2 and Contact Resistance. But then I realized, I'm like, yeah, but the mission that they really want to do, which is Established Settlement, they need a Fed icon. So then it's like, okay, so I guess they would be able to do these since they all have the Fed icon on them. And this would kind of be your 4-mission suite for Delta Quadrant Klingons to do. Because you can solve this mission for 55 points with the Delta Quadrant, so you just got to do a space mission first. But that's what you don't have here. That's what you don't have. So that's why I ran aground with that idea. Yeah, so... So unfortunately, Delta Quadrant Klingons, you're not going to get the help. I was kind of hoping that you'd be able to get some help with that, but you just don't. But I think Kazon and Hirogen, are going to get some help here, because they are going to have access to Preliminary Incursion and the Alpha Quadrant Probe, and then Hunt Alien and Bypass Warzone, all having the Klingon icon, and then they don't really care where they start. I mean, Hirogen in particular, they don't need Liberation to really operate, and so they would be able to just kind of to utilize that, and Contact Resistance here with the non-aligned icon to gain access. And so if you're using, so if you're playing Kazon, you'd utilize the Hirogen icons here. And there's kind of your 4-mission suite, and you've got 3 space and a planet, so you can hunt the alien. So yeah. Now, the one that's took the most thought, but is simplest when you really once you piece it out, is Vulcan. They have a extract rare mineral mission, which will get plus 5 points if you have a Vulcan ship there, so it's a 35-point mission for them. With the different IDICs that they have, they gain access to other missions. And so they have access to basically everything in the Alpha Quadrant here. In some way, shape, or another. If you wanted to play Courage of the Bashar, you can do that. You just gain access to all the ones that require security, and so that's Mirror Quadrant. That's all Mirror Quadrant. You can gain access to Battle of Cardassia with feds, so you're lining up there. Yeah, I'm sure there's others if we actually like really dug through it. Oh yeah, of course there's this one here. That's the Romulan icon, so you're just using the Romulan icon there. You can go investigate destruction Romulan icon. Doesn't because it requires security. Yeah, there's a lot of things that you can do when you open up with security, and then that deck's running espionage cards. You go Vulcan on Klingon. So if you want to do Klingon instead, you got Klingon, Klingon, Klingon. You got Klingon. You got Klingon. You've got Klingon. So yeah, Klingon. As I said, the Klingon icon being so ubiquitous, I think that's going to be really where it's at. So. Power of the High Command is officer, so it's kind of the same thing. Instead of like this mission and so forth, with the officers and stuff like that, you don't really get that mission and so forth, but you could do something different instead. Instead of doing this mission, you could just gain access to a bunch of like officer missions that are Bajoran somehow, or Cardassian somehow. Yeah. Here's a security mission as well for Courage of the Bashar off of Romulan. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of options here. Just going to take time for people to just kind of maybe figure it out. But again, it all falls back on the idea that Know Your Enemy is a 5-star card in the sense of it's going to be absolutely amazing in the decks that use it, and it's going to open up some new decks. Anytime you get a card that encourages you to open up new decks and stuff like that is a good thing for the game. So that's another reason why we're bumping it to a 5-star. But so we'll go back to the list here, and I'll give us the 1 through 5 here. Obviously, number 1 is the only 5-star card, Know Your Enemy. Probably number 2 for me in the set is Repair Sabotage. Number 3, Covert Incursion. Number 4 is Andro. And number 5 is Dark Matter Pockets. And we'll give an honorable mention to Tespar Egg as another like solid 4, but we're just not putting it in the top 5 because it's really just kind of limited to Cardassian only, whereas these other cards are not. So they have use by multiple different affiliations and stuff like that. So yeah, so that's my top 5 from the set. Again, feel free to leave your own thoughts, comments, opinions below, and make sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel so you're notified when I post in the future, and may the profits be with you.